accountant, and I set up a tax company in 1999, and I ran it for 10 years, and I loved tax. But then I realized after 10 years it wasn't my calling, and I joined the Conservative Party, and I learned about PR, and I fell in love with my industry, and I set up an agency 5 years ago. And in the beginning, my agency was very focused on getting press coverage, so getting my clients in the Times and the BBC, and that was my main focus. And then an intern came into my agency and said, "I can't believe you're not on Twitter." And I said, "Oh, well, I don't see the point." And I had all these reasons and rationale in my head why we shouldn't use Twitter, that, you know, you can't actually draw a line between a tweet that you send out and a sale or a lead generation tool, and I didn't get Twitter. And but my intern kept on saying, you know, it's the future, and, you know, and for fear of becoming an auntie, I thought I need to learn how to do Twitter, and I can't have this intern telling me that, you know, I'm not with it. So I set up Twitter, hated it, and I did it for about a year before I understood its relevance. And so I would, you know, send out my first tweet. You know, you feel very exposed because it's the public, and you're not quite sure how people are going to react to you. Then you feel slightly depressed because nobody's retweeting you, and then somebody favorites you, and you're like, "Why did you favorite me? Retweet me. You've got 20,000 followers. I don't need a favorite. I need a retweet." And so you have this sort of emotional journey with well, that's what I had with Twitter. And so I learned about it myself. I didn't have any professional training, and then I grew to understand and get Twitter. And what I understood about Twitter is it's really about understanding who you are, what do you want out of Twitter, and understanding that Twitter can be a little bit like having a baby. You can't just set it up and then just leave it there. If you actually want to achieve something with Twitter as a platform, you need to give it time and you need to give it thought. And so what I did is I thought to myself, okay, why am I using Twitter as opposed to using Facebook? And I realized Facebook I'm using because being a working mum, I don't have time to meet up with all my friends and my family, so Facebook is really for my friends and my family to post pictures and, you know, have holiday pictures, my daughter growing up, etc. And then I thought, Twitter I'm going to use purely for work. So what I made sure is that the content that I pushed out on Facebook, which was personal, was very different to the content that I put out on Twitter. And so what I did for Twitter is I followed people that were relevant for my work. So relevant for my work is certain journalists, leads, so people who I want to work for, my clients, and industry people that I want to learn from who are leaders in PR. And so I think the key about social media is that you have lots of different social media platforms, and you have to create a plan for each different platform because they're not going to exactly be the same. Facebook typically personal, friends and family. Twitter could be work. Instagram could be because you're a foodie and you want to keep up with food or, you know, whatever your hobby is. So have a PR plan that will be specific to your actual social media platform. I began to realize the relevance of having social media when I started seeing things coming back. So, for instance, I'm on the board of Care Pakistan, which is the largest NGO educational NGO of Pakistan, and so a BBC producer follows me on Twitter because he saw a mutual friend retweet my tweet, and this was a couple of weeks ago. And then all of a sudden, you heard what happened last week with the Pakistani honour killing, and then the 2 Indian girls who were gang raped and hung. I was horrified when this happened. The girl who was killed in Pakistan had the same name as me, Farzana, and her surname, Praveen, was my mother's name. And what happened in India was horrific, and especially after what happened in 2012 and the gang rape that happened. And I thought, how could this be happening again? And I was really disgusted, and I was upset, and I was very vocal about it on Twitter. And this BBC producer, seeing my tweet, called me up and said, and we don't know each other, we've only met through Twitter, and he called me up and said, would you like to come on BBC World News? And he called me up and I said, yes, absolutely. Well, he sent me an email first, and I went on BBC World News, and I had the opportunity to have my voice heard. So Twitter isn't just about having your voice heard through tweets, it's about building relationships which in turn are conduits to having your voice heard. And that's one thing to understand with Twitter. It's not just having a tweet out there and finding out how many retweets you get or favorites or how many reads. It's about building relationships, and through those relationships get opportunities where you can have your voice heard. So that was my personal journey with Twitter. I didn't see the relevance of it. I hated it for a year. started using it, then I fell in love with it, then I understood how important it was, and then I have a very clear content in my mind about what I do for Twitter, for Instagram, and for Facebook and LinkedIn. So then that leads me to what you should do and what you shouldn't do for social media. For social media, you should think before you tweet. So when a client comes to us, and ironically, considering I was very new to Twitter, now in the agency we have a digital team where we actually are paid by clients to create content for them and push them out on digital platforms. The first thing that we realized is a lot of clients were coming to us saying, well, it's wonderful that we got an article in the Times, but, we haven't actually got many leads from it. And, sometimes we meet somebody at a party, then they go and Google us, and that wonderful piece you got for us in the Times is on Google page 4. And I want everyone to know that that I was in the Times, but nobody goes to page 4 unless they're a psychopath or they're stalking you. And so I thought to myself, well, what can we do about that? And I've realized that more and more people, what they do is that when they meet you for business or they meet you on a personal, they go and Google you, they check you out before they meet you, after they meet you. And so you need to control your digital narrative. And what that means is when you Google yourself, which I often do, like a sad loser, and what I do is I Google myself because I want to see what's on page 1, and I want to control my own narrative. I want to make sure that the items that I want people to see are on page 1 and not on page 7. So how do you do this? It's all about SEO ranking. So, for instance, so some websites have higher SEO than others. Like Daily Mail has a very high SEO, purely because it uploads a lot of content, and also a lot of people use it, and people also stay on the website for a long time and read the Daily Mail, and that all contributes to its SEO ranking. So what I realize is that your social media platforms have a very high SEO ranking. So if you Google yourself, you'll often find on your first page, you'll have your LinkedIn account if you make it public, you'll have your Twitter, you'll have your Instagram, your Google Plus, and Facebook if you have a public profile. And so it gives you an opportunity to control your digital narrative. And on your social media, you can put in content, so you can control how people, to a certain extent, perceive you by choosing what you want to put on your social media. So social media isn't always about people who follow you or people who read your tweets. It's about people that you meet at a party or you meet at an industry event who go back, Google you, go to your Twitter, and then they can look at your profile. You can put in the little profile section of Twitter the charities that you're passionate about, and even who you follow frames you in a way. So sometimes when I meet people, or if I'm about to meet them, I go to their Twitter account. I don't just look at their content and what they're tweeting about. I look at who they follow. And I look at who's relevant for them, and that gives you an insight into that person. And I think it's very useful for business meetings to have an insight before you meet them or even after you meet them, and because everybody has so many different facets of their personality. And I think some people are more controlled on social media than others, but you can glean a lot of information about people that you're potentially looking to hire, you're potentially looking to marry, potentially looking to date, and also people and also your competitors. So a lot of what we do in marketing is we look at the competitor landscape. So we see what are the competitors up to, what are they doing. If you're just launching a new business, and this is what I did when I launched my PR agency, because I didn't really know what I was doing, because I was an accountant moving into PR, what I did is I analysed to death my competitors. I looked at all of them, I followed their social media platform, I figured out, well, this PR agency has been around for 20 years, they must have honed a very good content marketing plan, and I can learn quickly by looking at what they're doing and how they're doing it. And so I think it can't be underestimated using social media as a tool to look at your competitors, not to always just reinvent the wheel, but to stand on the shoulder of those who've come before us, who've been in the industry longer than us, glean from them, build upon it, ideally do better than what they're doing. So social media has many different uses, and it isn't just simply I sent out a tweet and I got a client back. It isn't so binary in black and white. It's much more grey in terms of the advantages for using it. And of course I've been using Twitter quite a lot, but even if you look at Facebook, for instance, we do a lot of events at our agency, and some events of ours are better than others. And not everybody attends our events. So what we do is our social media person in our office, he carefully curates the pictures that he puts on Facebook. So for instance, I could have done a birthday party and maybe half the people didn't turn up and the people who did looked a bit drunk and a bit dishevelled, but I want to perhaps curate the pictures to make my event look like it was a success. So the beautiful thing about Facebook is you can take a whole bunch of pictures and you can make a dud party look like, you know, something amazing. And I've done that in the past, and I've had, like, for instance, I've done press events where, actually there was one last night, and we had 60 press. Miriam's laughing because she's on the press team. We had 60 press who attended, and for some reason, a lot of them didn't turn up, and it was a disaster, actually. And we had about 20 who turned up, and we had it in this beautiful operating theatre, and it was really empty. And the client was fundamentally happy because the 20 that came were top tier, and he got his article. But it was a dud press event. But what we did, our social media person took pictures of angles, took pictures to make sure that it looked crowded, i.e. the only 3 people in one corner, you know, and, you know, so you do the room shot, but the room shot isn't going to be, you know, the empty room, so you sort of do it. And also with Instagram, you can use a different filter, so you make things look a lot better than they are. We also do a lot of photoshopping in the agency, and I just did the Mayfair Times Indian edition, for instance, and we photoshopped, including myself, as well as a lot of people, to make them look, you know, enhanced, shall we say. And I gave myself more of a figure than I have. I mean, you can do amazing things with social media. And the fact is that with social media, you can engage with people that you don't have to see face to face. And you can build your own story, your own narrative. You can do it visually through photoshopping, through editing of pictures. You can do it through copy. So, it's a wonderful world. And also, on a personal level, what's useful for me for social media is, by being a working mum, I don't have time to keep up and manage my network. A lot of my business comes from my network. 90% of my business comes from personal referrals. And you need to manage your network, and you need to keep up with them, otherwise they forget about you. So having something like social media, like having Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, people are constantly reminded of you. If you don't have time to have that coffee with them that you used to do when you were at university once a week, you don't have that time. So social media is a very efficient way of maintaining your network, as well as developing your network for new people as well. And I can't emphasize how wonderful social media is, and the fact that it did take me a year to get it, but once I got it, I actually personally benefited from it, and then I created a department within the agency, and we're actually getting paid for doing social media content. But the one thing to understand most of all is you have to think about it, because you have to think which social media platforms are relevant for you, are relevant for your target audience, and the content that you push out, and also understand that it's not like a slot machine that you put money in and straight away you'll get something out. It could take a very long time to develop something that comes out, but I think it's important to be part of the social media community, because that is in essence where we are heading for the future. And I think there's very interesting developments. As Rupert said, you know, we could be tweeting on our phone, or Twitter could even be dead next year, and it could be something completely different. So I think definitely it is important, and you may not see the benefits within a week, within a month, or even within a year, but you will, if you stick to it, you'll ultimately get a lot out of it.